Hello, everyone. Welcome to ISE Talks, the ISE Business School webcast. I am Pedro Hollanda, professor in the Managing People Department, and today we will be talking to Joan Fontrodona. Thank you, Joan, for your willingness to talk about such an interesting topics.
Hello.
Joan Fontrodona, I will start just presenting you. Joan is the professor and director in business sector. Is professor and director in the Business Ethics Department at ISE Business School. He also holds the CaixaBank Chair of Sustainability and Social Impact and is the director of the Center for Business in Society. He's the ISE representative at the Global Compact of the United Nations and at the UN Principles for Responsible Management Education. He has written and collaborated to several books and was guest editor in several special issues of scientific journals on business ethics and social responsibility. Wow, Joan Fontrodona, thank you so much. Welcome. Anything you would like to add for starting about your research interest or on anything else?
No, thank you for the invitation, and I hope we had an interesting conversation.
Okay, so let's get started. Talking about the younger generations. Research indicates that younger generations, Z and millennials, are increasingly willing to reject an assignment or even a potential job opportunity for ethical reasons. When managers face ethical dilemmas in companies that lack responsibility or possess cultures clashing with their values, how can they discern when to leave, when to blow the whistle, if there is a channel to blow the whistle, and when to try to influence change?
That's an interesting question, and I think there are several things that you mentioned that maybe it's good to talk a little bit about. First of all, the idea of how the new generations, maybe they are looking for something different when they think about their professional future. Although I think it's not just a matter of the young generations. No, it's something that is also more general. Nowadays, I think we are changing what we expect from our jobs, and how we understand job satisfaction is not anymore a matter of how much money I'm going to make or the kind of promotion I'm going to receive. There is also nowadays, I think, another feeling or another sensitivity towards companies that have a purpose, companies that have a social responsibility, companies that are transparent in what they are doing, and this new sensitivity. That is true that maybe it's higher, when thinking about the new generations, also implies a kind of different requirements on how companies deal with the selection process and how they incorporate the talent and what they offer to the people. So it's something interesting to think about and to discuss. No? Then you mentioned the ideas of the conflicts that sometimes people face in companies, and this is also true. I think that this is something that all of us experience, because there are no perfect companies. We have to take take for granted and assume that there are no perfect companies. What we prefer and what we want is that our values are aligned with the values of the companies or with the values of the society where we live. But it's true, I think, that sometimes, from time to time, we face this kind of conflicts between what I value, what my company is asking for, or even my bosses are also asking. And this kind of inconsistencies, I think they even increase when companies are weak in their ethical framework or in their standards, and then these conflicts appear from time to time, and and how we deal with these conflicts. No, this is something also. This is, I think, was your last point. No, how we deal with these concepts of what kind of alternatives we have when we deal with these conflicts. There is this framework that says that when you face this kind of conflicts between my values and the values of the company that I'm working, you can voice, you can be loyal, or you can exit. Be loyal in a negative sense of don't just follow orders, don't think about it, just follow the orders you receive. You can try to voice, you can try to make the organization to know what is your feeling and why you differ from what they are asking you to do, and you can always leave. Of course, leaving is like the last solution, and before leaving, companies have to create, so to say, a space for people to let know the company what are their feelings and why they feel bad with the actions and the behaviors they are asked to do. No? How to decide if I leave, I stay, or I voice? In the business schools, we have the answer. No, it depends, right? It depends. There is no single solution or a single answer. It depends on the specific circumstances. It depends on the level of ethical flexibility that the company may have. It depends on also our tolerance in depending on the seriousness of the action I am asked to perform. It depends on my potential to change behaviors and to fight for a positive change. Taking these things into account, then you can decide, shall I voice, shall I leave? I think that is also important for companies to be aware of these conflicts and to create a room for a space for people to voice. When I feel bad with something that my company is asking me to do, and the only alternative that I receive from my company is if you don't like, you can leave. I think that we have a problem because we can create a space. Of course, I can leave. Of course, I always have the solution to leave, but we should have room for staying and let people to voice and have the opportunity to change, because also we can learn from why people disagree with the things that we are asking them to do.
Great. So should I fight or should I flee? It depends. And companies have a big role on giving support, giving space for them to voice and help to enhance this ethical culture, ethical workplace. Great. Joan, now switching positions, taking the position of not anymore an employee, but now an employer. An employer that faces a selection process. How can companies anticipate, even if it is possible to anticipate and evaluate the ethical competencies of a candidate in a selection process? What are your thoughts about effectively integrating ethical assessments on these selection processes?
We find here an interesting paradox because when we look at evaluating candidates, we should evaluate not only knowledge, skills, also attitudes. This is a kind of framework that is used in the long learning literature. You always
yes.
Different competences are knowledge, skills, and attitudes. Paradoxically, it's easy to evaluate knowledge. It's easy to evaluate the skills if you are able to work in teams, or if you are fluent in another language or whatever, right? These are skills. And attitudes, that maybe it's the more deepest element and the most important element when we try to evaluate people, because we don't only know people. We not only want people that knows a lot or they have some skills, but that they have a good and ethical attitude. Paradoxically, this aspect, which is the most important one, is the most difficult and the most hardest to evaluate. We don't have a tool like if you are driving and they can measure how many alcohol you have in your blood, right? You just blow and they measure the quantity of alcohol in your blood. We don't have a kind of ethicometer where you just blow and they discover how ethical you are, right? We don't have this kind of tool. How can we try to evaluate and see, perceive what is the ethical attitudes, these ethical values that we are looking in people? No? There are some tools and there are some ways of trying to discover or apprise and have some kind of evaluation. When in the process of selection, you can use in the interviews, you can use some kind of ethical scenarios, or you can ask to the candidate, can you give me an example of a time when you disagreed with a company policy for ethical reasons, and explain why and explain how did you react? And maybe letting them explain, letting the candidate explain, maybe you can you can foresee something. Of course, when we are in a selection process and we are the candidates, we try to be the best of all. No, so there is also how true people are in what they say. No, but you can ask these kind of questions, or you can put a case, and present a situation and ask the candidate to identify the ethical issues. And to ask to propose possible solutions. You can. There are some tools that are at the more psychological level that try to assess the integrity of people, if they lie or not. We have even these tools that writing tools, and that you can discover if people or the machines that try to discover if people are lying or not. I'm not quite sure if these are good elements. But what is also important, I think, is looking at the other side, that the companies and the employers make also sure and clear what are their values, and they are transparent about their core values, and tell the candidates, look, these are our values. Are you going to be happy with these values, with this culture of this company? So I think this is also a part of the process, not just to try to see the attitudes and the values of the candidates, but also express our own culture and our own values and make people aware, because afterwards, maybe we are going to talk about that afterwards, no? But if they are aware of the kind of people you are searching, if they don't live according to these values, then they cannot say, oh, you didn't tell me anything. No, I told you from the very beginning, and now you are responsible because you didn't follow the values that we were supposed to live. And I was telling you from the very beginning. No? So both parties have something to say in this matter.
Great. So be the more explicit possible about values prior, so they can be attracted if they are the right people, and they can reject that job offer if they don't align. Great. And now we know about ethical competencies in that they are dynamic. So we have the ethical fading phenomena. So we have some elements that help us be more ethical or less ethical. To make a decision and act ethically, managers need first to recognize here there is a moral aspect present in certain situations. This capacity to identify a moral aspect is what James Rest described it as moral sensitivity, right? Then, additionally, behaving ethically requires the ability to evaluate actions as good or bad, to make a moral judgment. And then the person's willingness to act for moral reasons. There is the moral motivation. So you have moral sensitivity, moral judgment, and then moral motivation. While moral judgment tells us this is the right thing to do, moral motivation urges us, I ought to do this, I must do this. As discussed, some research suggests a trend in increasing moral sensitivity in general. More people are considering more moral criteria in decision making. But what about moral judgment and moral motivation? How do you think companies can foster and develop these elements among their leaders, their managers?
You describe very well the process. First of all, we need some kind of sensitivity. As I was mentioned before, there is this new sensitivity that goes beyond the pure economic aspects, and we enter in this sensitivity to social issues and to ethical issues that is increasing. But once you are sensitive, it's not enough. Then you need some kind of knowledge, and because you need to identify the ethical issues, you need to evaluate them, and you need some tools on evaluating what is right and wrong in a correct manner, right? And then not even is enough to know, because I can know a lot of things and doesn't mean that I'm going to do those things. No? So it's not just a matter of judgment, then it's also a matter of putting these judgments and these decisions into action. And because of that, or for that purpose, motivation, what moves me, motivation is what moves me to do. It should be also kind of moral motivation on people. Because sometimes we do good not because of moral reasons, but because of economic or because of political reasons. So in this process of increasing sensitivity, good judgment, and motivation, what companies can do, no? So from a more general to a more specific actions that companies can take to help people to develop sensitivity, judgment, and motivation, I will say, first of all, it's to create a kind of organizational culture that values ethical reasoning and values principled decision making. So the first step is to define and communicate very well the core values of the company, to establish like the framework, the ethical framework where the companies want to behave. Those core values that we are ready to follow in our daily activities, in our daily basis. No? And how do we define and communicate? Well, through regular discussions, training sessions, meetings, seminars, sometimes with the very more informal ways of having a coffee and talking about something that happened in the company, right? Then there is a moment for training. There's also there is a room for establishing training on theory and training on practice. No, how do I increase, or how do I make my employees make better judgments about ethical issues in their daily activities, trying to face similar situations and help them to analyze. No? So this is why most of the ethical programs have this kind of scenarios that make you to think about, to reflect, to check with the code of conduct of the company, or to check with some other standards, or even some small theory that helps you to identify what are these ethical issues and how you analyze these ethical issues. No? To learn from past experiences. It's important to learn, and sometimes it's good to learn from failures. We don't only learn from success. We also learn from failures, sometimes even more, right? So also from past experiences, we can learn, we can spend time on reflecting and learning from our past experiences. That helps us to learn that we should act differently in future situations and future occasions. No? So how to nurture this habit, no, of aligning my intentions, my values with my actions. No? It's also important, I think, something to think about in the companies, to focus also on to have like role models, or to have ethical mentors, so to say, people in the company that that help maybe the younger people on to deal with these issues. No? So how senior leaders can be role models for the rest of the company, how to assign a mentor in the company also in these ethical issues, help people to have someone to go and ask about your doubts or your uncertainties and the things that that you wonder how to act. You know? So this modeling, I think it's and this mentoring are very helpful for managers to internalize why they should behave and how they should behave and should navigate in these complex environments. No? And finally, also it's important to think in terms of what do we reward, right? Because incentives are depending on what we reward, we create, we educate also people. So the good judgment and the good motivation and the moral motivation are impacted by how we reward, no? How we have performance reviews that also integrate these ethical elements, how even maybe we part of our salary, of our variable part is linked to some issues to ethics or sustainability. This also has an impact. No? So as you see, all these, if a company is really interested in ethics, they have to put some resources on that. Show me the money, right? Like the movie, you know. So if you are interested in ethics, show me that you are interested also investing in ethics, and not just in these ethical policies of creating channels, having codes of conduct, giving training and mentoring systems and training programs. Also thinking how along the organization, along the different policies and practices of the organization, we ensure that these ethical considerations are present, no? in the objectives we establish, in the policies we establish, in the incentives, how we define them. And then ethics will be an integral part of the organization. And when we think, naturally comes to our mind, how much does it cost? It naturally will come, is there anything related to rights, duties, values of the company? This should appear naturally, as naturally appears. How much money does it cost? How much money I'm going to make? How much investment this requires? And this process of making this naturally is by learning and doing and training.
Not just specific dedicated actions, but also be integrating ethical elements on regular policies such as rewarding. Great. And something I've been thinking is about the compliance programs, because the compliance programs is a tool that many companies use to train on ethical competencies. But many programs I've seen are designed more based on rules, norms, than really helping people to make better ethical decision making. How can compliance programs really help people and foster an ethical culture? Maybe aiming to something greater, like common good, which is something that we see as overused word that is difficult to have a common understanding of what is common good in a world where there is so few common ground between people. So you know what I mean? It's difficult to talk about common good with so few values in common. How can a company try to base this compliance program, considering, of course, the regulations and the many other aspects that are to be considered, but having a more strong ground on common good?
Good. It's true. Nowadays, compliance is one of these fashion words, and it's useful. I'm not against compliance. I think it's very good and necessary. But I like to link compliance with a word that is not. It's a little bit different than common good, although they have the same basis and the same focus. And I like to link the concept of compliance with the concept of integrity. And I think that's these two concepts go together. They have a different meaning, of course, and a different approach, no? Because compliance is more related to what is acceptable or not, to rules, to accountability. And standards at the minimum level, so to say. No, we should not do that. No? And integrity is more at the maximum level. No, integrity is principles, values, common good. How can we excel? How can we better people, better company, etc. But compliance and integrity go together because, on one hand, compliance establishes a clear framework, right? It's very clear to say you shouldn't do that. That's perfect clear, no? So compliance helps to make things very specific, very concrete, but without integrity, we just stay at the level of compliance. The problem with compliance is that it runs the risk of becoming just a kind of check the box exercise. No, I do that, everything is done, and at the end I sign, and that complies with the law, and that's it. No, and we are losing opportunity of using compliance as a tool for creating an ethical culture. And this is something. It's to complement, to address the compliance with this more attractive, insightful way of integrity. So integrity helps to understand compliance as a way of encouraging employees to internalize the principles and to act in a positive way, and to help to create an ethical culture in organizations. No, there is a kind of cultural problem there, right? In our culture, in our Latin and culture that we share in Brazil, Spain, and many other places, since we were young, we were told that the worst thing you can be is in Spain we say chivato. In Portuguese, I don't know, it's kind of delator, no, or someone that goes to the teacher and says, "This guy has copied," no, because
we use is X9, o delator. Delator is the formal form, and we use the slang X9 também.
So this is worse, right? You cannot be that. No? Then we grow and we go to the company. The company tells us, if you see something wrong, let me know. And you say no, because I learned since I was a kid that this is not a good attitude. No? So we have to change this culture, right? We have to change the culture that compliance is not being a delator. No? That compliance is to help all of us to create an ethical culture, to detect the wrong behaviors and the misbehaviors before those misbehaviors are big enough that can have a problem with the company. No? And then we link compliance and integrity. And integrity helps us to understand that compliance is a good tool for creating an ethical culture. How we do that? Well, maybe we need to integrate into the training programs and the compliance programs. We need to integrate also the values and principles, not to limit the learning and the training programs just to what are the legal or the regulatory requirements, how we incorporate ethical values and company principles into this training. It's not just I do what is required, but also how I go the extra mile doing things that are not required but are good. No? How we see that in the complex world where we live is not just a matter of just covering the minimum levels of what we are expected to do, but because sometimes we have those conflicts that we were talking about before, no? Also at the organizational level, no? And then how these choices and how these complexities cannot be solved only with laws and with regulations. It requires a more deep understanding, requires us to be practically wise, and this requires this kind of integrity. How can I go beyond what is expected to change the world, right? Only with regulation, we don't change the world. We change the world when we do something else. No? So integrity is necessary. Again, the ethical leadership, no? And the example of the managers that provide examples for this, working the extra mile to excel, mm-hmm. Right? When we think about ethics, is to excel. To excel is to differentiate. When you just accomplish the minimum levels, compliance does not differentiate. You differentiate also if you go below the compliance, but compliance does not differentiate. How we want to be different, how we want to excel, we need to include this integrity-oriented perspective that combines with compliance. So this is like the two concepts I like to put together.
Great, that's amazing, and something I've been thinking while you were talking is about the timing, because the laws, the rules, the regulations often comes later. So we are facing many new situations that there is no compliance standards yet. So we have to have integrity to face it.
Right? Nowadays, with the artificial intelligence, we don't have rules. The rules always arrive later, no? And so we need to reflect, and also this is something important, that makes some kind of constraints on the relying too much on compliance. No?
Mm-hmm. But something I've been thinking also is because many executives, many CEOs are trying to act responsibly, having a more social concern about his actions, the company, effects on society. How can we encourage executives to act really responsibly, but without falling into what is called the CEO activism or executive activism? Because one thing is to develop a moral sensitivity to perceive an ethical challenge. Another is to exercise sound judgment. But the real dilemma here is another thing, is once morally judged, we have to decide in what fights I want to be involved and how, because we cannot fight every fight.
That's correct. And there are so many challenges and so many problems in this world, right, that we cannot enter into all the battles, no, because otherwise we don't have time and resources to enter all the battles. No, nowadays we have this framework of the Sustainable Development Goals, right?
Mhm.
17 goals, and all of them are important, but you cannot fight in all of them. You cannot do things in all of them because otherwise you are lost. No? What you said is true. There is also there has been a change. You know, maybe some years ago, the tendency was that companies and CEOs shouldn't be involved in political issues. We are here just to do business and forget about politics and forget about social issues. Just let's be neutral. No? Nowadays, it seems that things are changing, and also because the social expectations have changed, and also there is the trust barometer of Edelman, no? Edelman Trust Barometer that they publish every year, and systematically every year when they ask people which social agents they trust, normally we as a citizens trust more business than governments. No? And most of these social issues, we think that we trust more business that can solve those social issues than even governments. No? Which means that business has an important responsibility nowadays, and we are asking companies and business to take sides. No? Which is also difficult because once you take sides, you have some people with you and some people against you. No? And we see these days with the U.S. elections close, where business people are taking sides and the conflicts that they are creating sometimes. No? But with this tendency that it seems that because we trust companies and we ask them to take sides on social issues is always easier than political issues. Political issues maybe create more division. But with the social issues, your question or the second part of your question is important. No, which ones? Because I cannot fight everything. No, what are, so to say, the criteria, the points that help me to decide in which battles shall I fight, and in which I shouldn't, no, or I cannot. No, well, sometimes I think I shall battle or shall take responsibility on those issues that are close to me because maybe they are close to my values, the values of my company, no? Because of the talent, my competencies and the talent of my company, no? So I can use this talent to solve the social issues, no? Sometimes because of the how close are to how those issues affect to my stakeholders, in which issues I can have more impact. How can I make a meaningful impact on the different issues and choose those that I can be more effective? How can I prioritize the interest of my different stakeholders, and how can I solve also, how can I substitute the limitations of other agents in solving these problems? The relevance of the issues, sometimes it's not just a matter of how close is to me, but how important is, for the societies where I operate. Depending on the societies I operate, the countries or the regional areas in the world where I operate, there are some issues that are more important in one place than another. So again, the answer is it depends. It depends on my resources, on my capacities, on how important I think the problem is. But I have to think, right? And I have to decide. And when we are thinking again about the social development goals, the first exercise is among these 16 plus 1 goals. The first step is which ones do you want to choose? In which ones are you going to battle? And then what are you going to do to fight and to help to promote those goals. No?
Great. Many insightful criteria, because at the end of the day, the decision is of each person in that context, with that competencies, but we have to consider many aspects you mentioned. Thank you. And now a set of related questions. What do you think about the convenience of having a formal dismissal policies? What suggestions would you give to elaborate these policies? Because and the other questions are very related, and I think I can make it in a bundle. What advice would you give to someone who faces a situation that he or she considers giving ground for dismissal, but works in a company where there is no formal dismissal policy, and there is a culture of accepting some so-called minor deviations? How can a manager be more confident in deciding between what is acceptable and what is unacceptable in this context?
Okay, so we are now changing a little bit. The first question was, what can I do when I am in a company that I see things that I don't like, no, that fit with my values, and now it's just the opposite way. How companies can react when they detect some employee that is doing something that is wrong, no? Which is interesting. And maybe the first point is to realize the importance of having clear and formal policies. Because then it's easy to establish expectations. It's easy to be consistent in how you deal with these situations and these violations of your code of conduct or your values. No? So first of all, it's to realize the importance of having those dismissal policies. To set the standards, it's easy to communicate. It's easy to make that everybody is aware, and then there are no surprises afterwards, because from the very beginning, it's clear what you accept and what you don't accept. So how to have these formal policies? You have to define clearly what are the behaviors that are unacceptable. The more clear, the better for you then to decide and to act. It's good to establish a clear process of investigation and documentation to make sure that it's going to be a fair process. Also, it's not just accept or dismiss. No, it's also depending on the seriousness of the misbehaviors. You can have a different range of response that the organization may have towards these misbehaviors. No, sometimes it's going to be just a warning or a suspension or some mandatory training, and maybe it's going to be so serious or so repetitive that at the end you decide to fire someone. To fire someone. No? So depending on the seriousness. No? And then, of course, to make sure that when you establish these channels that allow people to let know the organization that something is wrong, to make sure that you reinforce the confidentiality and the support to those whistleblowers that will help you to detect those misbehaviors. No? What happens when you don't have these formal policies? Well, you have to, if you are a manager or a middle manager and you don't have the support of a formal policy, you always can have the support of the industry standards, and it's also good at sometimes to look at the industry standards. You can prepare yourself some kind of to document the incidents in the past to make sure that then you are fair on how to deal with the different situations in the future. You can try to give some or receive some guidance from external resources, and of course you have to battle and try to be advocate for these public for this policy, for having these formal policies, no, because for the importance and all the good things that having these formal policies. No? I think it's good also in order to convince companies why they need this kind of policies, to think about that the risks that companies face if they allow unethical behaviors and they don't stop those unethical behaviors on time. No? The risks you run because the misconduct might escalate. So, how good it is to detect the misbehaviors when they are small, because once they are big, there is no way of solving them. No, the risk of also legal, financial, or reputational damage that you can face when these misbehaviors become known and public. No? So, having these missile policies is not just a safeguard to protect you with these risks. Is also again going back to the discussion on compliance and integrity. Is a proactive measure to maintain a culture of integrity and accountability, because it's a way of letting know the organization that you take very serious that you don't accept these behaviors, no matter who is doing that, right? So sometimes when we find a manager that is very successful and with a lot of well results, and we catch doing this some crazy behavior, well, then is what you test. It's the cotton test that you really believe on your values. No, if you are ready to dismiss this person, maybe because he was very good on economical and financial results or some skills, some knowledge, but since it doesn't fit with the attitudes and the values you want, you are ready to dismiss him or her. No?
Great. And these decisions also communicate not just for that person, but for the others who are watching. And policies, as you said, have a very important educative purpose to tell people we really value these things. Great. Joan, to finish, I would like to make you a last brief question about the personal development. Considering the moral competencies and personal qualities, virtues, managers must develop to make ethical decisions. If someone wants to start a personal improvement plan in this area today, where would you suggest, how would you suggest this person to begin?
Wow. That's interesting. That's an excellent question. As we said, it's a matter of learning, not just knowledge and skills, but also attitudes, to have these moral competences, how to develop these moral competences, these personal qualities like integrity, courage, empathy, resilience. Nowadays is another very fashionable word, how to be a resilient person or a resilient organization. How do we start? I would say little by little. So first of all, trying to develop your self-awareness, maybe using also the what we said before, sensitivity, judgment, and motivation. So first of all, to develop your sensitivity, your self-awareness, and to sit and think, what are my core values? What ethical principles do I prioritize in my life and in my work? What are the red lines I'm not ready to cross, no matter the good consequences crossing these red lines will have in my life? And you can do this reflection by yourself. You can do this reflection seeking for some feedback with your colleagues or with a kind of ethical mentor that you will find. Sometimes it's also good to talk about these issues, right? With an active listening, with a dialogue, trying to empathize with situations and with people. How with open communications and conversations with people, you can learn from other sensitivities, other people. No, this is why we use the case method in our classes, right? Because listening from other people, we learn a lot, right? It's also good to spend sometimes, maybe if you are interested. I have found a lot of people that are interested in reading philosophy or ethics these days, no? So reading something about ethics, philosophy that gives you like the theory behind all these ideas. Trying to make a small acts of courage. We cannot expect that people are heroic in what they do, but maybe we can do a small acts of heroism, a small acts of courage, speaking up in meetings, raising your doubts in certain things, asking questions that people take for granted, and provoking some discussion on this, addressing some minor ethical issues that maybe are not very relevant, but for you, help you to increase in what you do and make you to be more courageous and be prepared for in the case that something bigger arrive. Again, creating some network around you. If you are alone, it's not. It's more difficult to fight, right? So if you create your network of people that maybe shares your thoughts, share your values, this will make you strong. Will make you feel that you are not alone against the world. But you will perceive that there are people that there are other people that think like you. Maybe also sharing or being involved in some kind of social activities, doing some volunteering work, also because practicing those things is a way of channeling these feelings that you have and learning something in the process. So also these actions of volunteering or being part of a social activity also help. So little by little is a process of learning, and the process of learning is just those small actions that we can start moving on our sensitivity, our judgment, and what moves us in life.
Thank you, John. Thank you for so many inspiring insights. And this was one more ISE Talks. Thank you, Joan, for your willingness to talk up with us. And we hope to talk with you anytime soon.
Whenever you want. Thank you.